Good morning. Thanks for tuning in to the TMI Show with Ted Rall and Manila Chan. I'm Ted Rall, but unless Manila's changed radically, that looks more like Robby West over there. Robby West is filling in for Manila Chan. She's out today. She'll be back tomorrow. And that sound in the background is my cat Clovis meowing because the door is closed and it creates anxiety. Oh, well, that'll be amusing. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us today. It's Thursday, September 4th, 2025. Please like, follow, and share the show. Today we have a full plate, as always. The big story is out of Lisbon, something that we don't talk about very often in, kind of ever, funiculars. We'll get into what exactly happens there in Lisbon on the funicular, with the death toll currently at 17. And expected to rise, 21 more people injured from all over the world. And so we'll talk about what happened there with this sort of inclined streetcar situation from the 19th century. Very picturesque thing, very tragic what happened there. And then also Robby and I will put on our historian hats and we'll catch you up on some of the classic, big, now largely forgotten transportation disasters here in the U.S. that have happened over the years, just as a reminder that it's not just the Portuguese. Also, I suspect that, Robby, you'll have a lot to say about the following topic, largely due to Trump's immigration crackdown and the resulting decline in tourism. For the first time in U.S. history, for the first time in nearly a quarter of a millennium, the total population of the United States is expected to drop this year in 2025. It's never happened before since independence in 1776. So that's going to be interesting to talk about. And finally, obviously, there's a lot of chaos at the Centers for Disease Control under Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And now we're starting to sort of see fractionalization on state health policies. California, Oregon, and Washington, the three big West Coast states, have announced that they're forming a public health alliance. If you ever read the Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, kind of reminds me of how those states started to split off first when, in that scenario, the United States had a new civil war and things started to fall apart. Meanwhile, in Florida, they're going exactly the opposite direction. California, Oregon, and Washington are increasing vaccine accessibility. Down in Florida, they're getting rid of vax mandates. So we'll talk about the politics there, about how we're becoming, over something that's not really just symbolic, but involves public health. We're really becoming a tale of two cities, two countries, I should say. So, Robby, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to imagine that we have Jaws. So, and I'll go ahead and read the first story. And we'll get into it.
Real quick, before you get to the first story, Starline over on YouTube, he says we've got to cover bodega cats.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
I don't know what a bodega is. I don't know what a bodega is.
A bodega is a basically in New York City and other big cities, particularly. Well, I would say LA has them too. Basically, they're small grocery stores. So typically with a deli attached. So it's it's like a 7-Eleven kind of. You can get cigarettes, you can get vape pens behind the register, deodorant or whatnot, and then also they'll have basically sort of a limited selection of deli kind of stuff. But a lot of bodegas, particularly in New York City, but in other cities as well, have cats, and they're like local celebrities. And for the most part, the cats they have a job to do down in the basement, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, for sure. So basically, they're just fancy gas stations or grocery stores.
They're not fancy. They're not fancy at all. They're called bodegas because they used to be only in Latino neighborhoods, and those used to be like downscale neighborhoods. That's kind of like a legacy thing. It's not really true anymore. Now a bodega could be quite fancy, but it's still definitely like a working class kind of vibe, I would say.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for the education. No gas.
Oh man, Anytime. All right, let's get to it. The death toll in the crash of a famous Lisbon streetcar popular with tourists rose to 17 today after 2 of the 23 injured people died, according to the emergency services officials there. The dead were all adults. Margarita Castro Martins, head of the Civil Protection Agency of Lisbon, said she didn't provide names or nationality, saying that the families haven't yet been informed. Another 21 were injured in the crash yesterday. These included Portuguese people as well as 2 Germans, 2 Spaniards, and 1 person each from France, Italy, Switzerland, Canada, Morocco, South Korea, and Cape Verde. The range of nationalities, of course, reflects what an incredible tourist attraction Lisbon is in general, and the funicular, as it's called. A funicular is a streetcar that stays parallel to the earth, but it goes up an incline. So you kind of have to imagine this. There's a famous one in Pittsburgh. There's 2 of them in Istanbul. Switzerland has a lot of them. Anyway, Portugal has declared a national day of mourning. Authorities gave no details about those killed. However, we do know that the streetcar's brakeman, Andre Marquez, is among the dead. So unfortunately, he's not around to answer questions about what happened there. The streetcar from the 19th century is one of Lisbon's big tourist attractions. I've seen it. I haven't ridden it. I saw it. And it's usually packed with foreigners at this time of the year. Now, Lisbon's famous for its very steep hills. So the funicular was originally installed as a legit form of transportation to get for people who just don't feel like making the climb, or who are elderly or need a little help to get up and down the hills. And so, think about a city like San Francisco. It's even hillier than that. Teams of pathologists at the National Forensics Institute worked through the night on autopsies. The injured were admitted to several hospitals in the Lisbon area. The crumpled wreckage of the streetcar was still at the downtown road where it crashed earlier today, cordoned off by the police. Bear in mind the time difference. The yellow and white streetcar, known as Elevador da Gloria, was lying on its side on the narrow road that it travels along. Its sides and top crumpled. It crashed into a building where the road bends, leaving parts of the mostly metal vehicle crushed. It hit the building with brutal force and fell apart like a cardboard box. Teresa Davo, who saw the whole thing, told Portuguese TV. She described the streetcar as out of control and seeming to have no brakes. She said she watched passers-by run into the middle of the nearby Avenida de Liberdade, or Freedom Avenue, the main street in the city. The crash happened at the start of evening rush hour around 6 p.m. local time. Emergency officials said all the victims were pulled out of the wreckage in just over 2 hours. The streetcar, like I said, it's called a funicular, is harnessed by street cables and carries more than 40 people, seated and standing. It's also used by the locals. The service, inaugurated back in 1885, goes up and down a few hundred meters of a hill on a curved, no-traffic street in tandem with one going the opposite direction, of course, because wouldn't be a very useful form of transportation if it went one way and just stayed there. It goes between Restauradas Square and Bairro Alto. That's a neighborhood known for its nightlife. And I apologize to Portuguese speakers for my butchering of the pronunciations here. Lisbon City Council halted operations of 3 other famous funiculars in the city while immediate inspections were carried out. So it's the best way to think about this is like if you think about streetcars in San Francisco, the way they work. If you've been there, their cable cars have a cable that goes underneath the street, and basically an engine pulls the car up under the street. But basically, it's underground; you don't see it, but the cable is pulling that thing up these steep hills. It's pretty much the same technology there. The only thing that makes it so interesting is that it is at it's at this angle, and it's very picturesque and it's very popular with tourists, and it has a very unusual and strange name, and so it attracts a lot of attention, and people are like, what be a funicular? I want to get on there.
Yeah, I've never heard of a funicular before this story, so I'm learning something new. TMI is living up to its name, and you actually answered a question I had for you. So if they use gravity to go downhill, how do they get back uphill? And now I know there's a cable. I guess it's kind of like the San Francisco trolley system, huh?
It's a lot like that, yeah, and it's the same. I mean, look, they were both built around the same time, right? I mean, the city of San Francisco largely burned down in 1906 during the earthquake, so most of the cable cars were put in right after that. But it's basically late 19th, early 20th century technology, and it's useful. It's not just cute. It is cute, but just like when you're mountain climbing, going down is far more dangerous than going up, because basically you're riding the brakes all the way down,
Right.
and that appears to be what happened here. It looks like the brakes failed, and I would not be surprised if we later find that a cable snapped, and that's ultimately what happened. I would also not be surprised if the streetcar was overloaded by weight. At this time of the year, there's a lot of tourists. It's the end of the summer season in Europe. All of Europe is on the move in August and early September, and before after the 6 week, they have 6 week vacation there every summer. Everybody in Europe does. So a lot of tourists were there. I wouldn't be surprised if there were too many people on it. The cable was old and snapped. Portugal's not the most, let's just say, it's not the richest country, and it's not the most organized. These are very easygoing kind of people. So inspections might have been a little lax, I'm guessing.
Gotcha. So how do they really differ from a trolley? Like, is there any real difference besides just the name, or is there actually an engineering difference? I don't know. So I'm learning something brand new.
I don't think there's a significant difference. The challenge is, of course, it's basically like with a trolley car, it's parallel to the surface of the street that it's traveling on, right? This is like at an angle, so you've got some more physics vectors to deal with when you're designing it, and basically the idea was in places where the hills are too steep. I mean, people couldn't sit on a traditional streetcar because they'd slide off the bench, right? Because it would be too uncomfortable. So if you're going up, like say a 20 or 30 degree incline, it just doesn't work. The famous one in Istanbul is called Tunnel. It's very old. There's another one that was built back in 2006 or so, that is very modern and up to date. But you can sort of see like how things could easily go wrong, because I mean, basically it is like a streetcar, except that you have to prop one side up, right? So it's, there's more going on, that there's more control that has to take place.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for that explanation, because I honestly, before now, like I said, I had no idea what this thing even was. At first, I thought it was kind of like a gondola, like what you would use to go to for skiers. And the more I read into it, it's like, no, Robby, you're completely off the reservation on this one. So my ignorance is showing.
It's like, so Robby, did you ever read Voltaire's Candide?
I never have. It's on my to read list, but I've never read it.
Well, it's excellent. And whenever I think of tragedies happening in Lisbon, so Candide is kind of like, it's set in Lisbon. Candide is basically a guy. In the musical version, there's a song where he says, but it's in the play too, where he says, "All for the best in the best of all possible worlds." It's making fun of hopeless optimists, and it's also making fun of people who always have faith in God, that everything will always be better. Voltaire was, of course, a huge critic of clericalism and religion. And but anyway, Voltaire is making fun of the Great Lisbon earthquake of 1755. So on All Saints' Day, November 1st, 1755, this earthquake hit Lisbon, and you have to understand that Portugal was like the center of a massive empire at the time, right? They owned Brazil, they had Macau, they had stuff all over the world. It was a big, Angola, all these, well, I guess they got Angola later, but it was a big empire. And so anyway, this earthquake strikes in the morning. 8.5 to 9.0 on the Richter scale is what they think it was. One of the biggest earthquakes ever recorded. So anyway, the quake lasted a long time. It went like 5 minutes, 3 main shocks, right? So about 40 minutes after the earthquake, which by the way, destroyed most of the city and killed much of its population, as if God wasn't done with Lisbon at that point. There's the sea fell away, and then the tsunami hit about between 20 and 65 feet high. It surged up the river, flooded what was left, and then after that washed away, then the fire broke out and burned everything that survived those two incidents, right? All for the best in this best of all possible world. God just decided to smite the shit out of Lisbon. So, I guess you could say this was when you go there now, you're like, why would God hate this place? It's nothing, doesn't seem so evil. But anyway, it's kind of an amazing story and really worth looking into. So, Rousseau, Jean, at the time argued that this showed why living in cities was inherently dangerous. Although, frankly, if you lived all by yourself, you could still be wiped off the earth by a tsunami or an earthquake or whatever. But
about to say, I mean, I don't think that being a hermit, if there's a tsunami coming, is really going to save you in that situation. The plague, maybe, but a tsunami, not so much.
Plague for sure. Adrian over on the Rumble is asking, I wonder if Lisbon will get rid of their streetcars after this. I sincerely hope not, and I sincerely doubt it, to be honest. This reminds me, I mean, of course, France France got rid of the Concorde after it crashed. It never should have. The Concorde wasn't poorly designed. The Concorde didn't crash because of a design flaw or anything like that. I mean, the plane simply was waiting it was taxiing, waiting for takeoff, and a Continental normal non-SST, a piece of it fell off from the plane. The Concorde ran over that piece. It got sucked into the engine. The engine caught fire and the plane crashed. That would have happened to any plane. So It's like, it's kind of unfair. And now we don't have supersonic transport anymore.
Well, it's kind of weird because typically Americans are the ones that always overreact, just over-adjust either one way or the other. Europeans seem to typically be more thoughtful with how they handle things, at least from the way that I look at things. So I'm hoping that Portugal doesn't just pull the plug on something that's just this old, especially since, well, I mean, let's be honest, they need the tourist money.
Yeah, that's true. And not to mention, it's like, the thing is, it's kind of like when I got on a Soviet plane from 1954, and a Tupolev 154 had wooden toilet seats. And, there's two ways to look at something that old, which is, wow, that's really old. It could fall apart any time. On the other hand, it's really old. It's been working for a long time.
I would much rather have something that's really old and just has staying power as opposed to some modern marvel with no scratches on it. Just saying.
You and I think, are on the same page here. So I thought it would be fun to take a little trip down Disaster Road to talk about some disasters that here in the United States we've forgotten about. And some of these I didn't know about. But one of the ones that I've always thought was really interesting that we never talk about, and it was a big deal at the time. It was like a 9/11. Here in New York, there was the General Slocum steamboat fire. Did you ever hear about that?
Vaguely. I remember, I want to say it was like a year and a half ago. I was helping Thomas with a homework assignment where we're just looking through most of the disasters that happened around the Great Lakes, Lake Champlain. I guess it's not around the real Great Lakes, but just up there in that area, a lot of the steamboat accidents and such. And so I read about that one.
Yeah, so there was a lot of steamboats caught fire for obvious reasons. Steamboat, and anyway, so the General Slocum was in the East River, which is between Manhattan and Queens and the Bronx. Anyway, there was a fire, 1904. It was basically a ferry, and it killed 1,021 people, mostly women and children, due to the fact that the life preservers didn't work and the crew were retards. And that's largely forgotten. but it actually spurred a law that is still in effect called the General Slocum Law, which defines like how many life jackets there and lifeboats there have to be on a boat in order to be legal. Also, I know you know this story, and another New York story, when a B-25 bomber crashed into the Empire State
Oh
Building
yeah,
during the final closing days of World War II. Had nothing
yeah,
to
because
do
of
with
the
the
fog.
war. Yeah, because of the fog. And that happened July 28th, 1945. 14 people died. Whenever I talk about 9/11, I always compare that incident with 9/11. So the Empire State Building was built in the 30s with, basically with 8 redundant support systems. So there was no chance the building was ever going to collapse. 2 of those systems failed when the plane crashed. And certainly the fire was devastating and it killed people on impact. But, and of course, it's also true that like the plane that hit it wasn't as big as a passenger jet on 9/11. All those things being true, the World Trade Center didn't have sufficient redundant support systems. It was hanging curtain construction. So when the plane sort of sliced through like cheese, the support structure was, inherently compromised. And when I studied civil engineering, for a hot second, I was a civil engineering major. They told us the Empire State Building, the World Trade Center is very vulnerable. It could come down just like that. And they just thought like, it'll be fine. It was just like, it was really not only predictable, but it was predicted.
Well, the thing is, I know you know about this. When the blind sheikh, when he had his people, bomb the Empire State Building using those trucks, yeah, and they almost brought it down. Then it was just
That's true. They got close. Well, that one was like more of a. So it's funny, right? They didn't really know they were going to make the buildings collapse in 2001. But in 1993, right, they parked the truck bomb near the support structure in the parking garage in the basement. And that was the whole idea, was to bring the whole thing down. By the way, do you know how those idiots got caught? I love this story. So they rented a van and they put down a $250 deposit on the van, and they went back to claim their deposit. They were like,
that was smart.
It's like, not to mention they didn't have the van anymore. So it's like, someone stole our van. We want $250 back. You pay. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a level of retardation that I would not have expected from someone engaging in an act of international terrorism.
No, you really wouldn't expect that. It's kind of like, if you're the FBI, it's really too good to be true.
So you're saying that the blind sheikh was not sending his best and brightest?
No, I guess it's like, if you're willing to blow yourself up, you're probably not that smart to begin with. Although it wasn't a suicide thing. They just left it there, and there was a timer. I still remember that day very vividly because my then future wife's best friend calls me. I was living alone, and she's like, "Oh, can I crash at your place? Because all the whole city's closed, and I can't get back to New Jersey. There's no trains or anything." And I'm like, I only have one bed, and you're a woman, and I'm engaged, and no. And she's like, "Oh, it's okay. We'll just have sex." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, get a hotel." What are you doing? So anyway,
so I guess the whole concept of monogamy was kind of foreign to a lot of your people that you knew, huh?
Well, it was foreign to her. She was definitely. Look, I don't mean anything bad by this. Some of my favorite people are slutty, and certainly I have been slutty. But it's like, she was. It was kind of like, what are you thinking, woman? And we'd known each other for a long time, so it was also weird because, I'd actually walked in on her having sex with her boyfriend, so I knew. I was kind of like, I've already had this experience without ever having to do any of the work. I've already seen it. Anyway. So back in 1876, during the nation's centennial year, there was a passenger plane train, I should say, there were no planes, plunged into a gorge when an iron bridge collapsed, killing 92 to 98 people. I can't believe they still haven't figured out the death count yet, back in 1876, due to poor engineering and maintenance. This was called the Ashtabula River Railroad Disaster, December 29th, 1876. Another steamer, the Eastland, capsized in the Chicago River in 1915. That killed 844 people due to overloading and instability. Ironically, too many lifeboats made the ship too heavy.
Yeah, I read about that one.
Really? I'd never heard of that one.
Well, because when he was going through, so basically what he was, and the
Chicago River is small, right? I mean, it's not that. I'm kind of like, I feel like any fool should be able to swim out of that.
Well, I would imagine the time of the year, because if it's going to be cold, a lot of times you'll just get numb.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big factor.
No, this was July. This happened in July. Yeah.
Well, here in Montana, Flathead Lake, that water doesn't start getting warm. And I use the word warm loosely until like the middle of August. And so I don't know how Lake Michigan is. I don't know how cold it gets, but I just wonder if that played a factor into it. And plus, if it capsized, there's no swimming out of that puppy. I mean, you're done.
Over on YouTube, Robby, Starlion saying that they recently watched a video about how the French military raided an Air France plane due to Algerian hijackers, and their plane was to crash into the Eiffel Tower. So in terms of the idea in the 1990s that no one was thinking of this wasn't exactly accurate, perhaps. No, that is true. There was also, you can look this up online and do a Google image search. There was a community opposition group that was pissed off about the construction of the World Trade Center back in the mid-1960s. I think they started construction around 1967. And it shows a picture of a plane crashing into the future World Trade Center. They were worried that a plane might get lost on its way to JFK, which at the time was still called Idlewild, and would crash into the buildings because it was on the flight path on the way to JFK. So the idea that no plane was ever going to run into these things, no. And by the way, I did a cartoon years before 9/11 that depicted a plane crashing into the World Trade Center, and I just did it just because. And after 9/11, when in the fevered pitch of all this, people were found the cartoon and they were like, "What did you know, Rall?" And I'm like,
I was about to say, so were you contacted by the FBI or anything? Did they reach out to you? So we know.
No, they were smart enough not to do that, because it's just my imagination. I mean, what can I say? It didn't mean anything.
Your prophet didn't even know it.
New York, a lot of things happened in New York back then. This is a cool, or I should say a wild story. In 1918, the Malbone Street subway disaster. So a subway derailed at high speed, killed about 100 people. The motorman didn't know what he was doing. And basically they got rid of wooden cars and replaced them with steel cars. And they thought that would be better. They don't even, there was also, and this didn't even make the list here, but there was also a famous subway derailment in Williamsburg that killed, I think, a lot more than that, where the train was on the elevated subway and it fell off the elevated subway in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. That would now be on the J and M lines. And it's if you see the pictures of it, it's really terrifying. Nashville, the great train wreck of 1918, who could forget? 2 trains collided head on due to a scheduling error, killing 101 people at Dutchman's Curve. Oops.
Yeah, I've actually been there. It's a really tight gorge. I can definitely see how that could happen, because you can't see nothing.
So now there would be there would be an automated signal switch that would probably prevent that from happening, I would imagine.
Adrian that makes a good point over there on the Rumble feed. Talks about how Tower 7 looks like a controlled demolition, and I want to agree with him. I think there's more to that than we've ever been told.
Well, it's funny because John Kiriakou and I talked about this on the program a couple of days ago. We were asked about 7 World Trade Center, and I think the big reasons that people thought it was a controlled demolition there were threefold. Number one, it happened at 5 p.m, where hours after the initial attack. Also, it came down kind of all was just like it pancaked all, without, it didn't topple over. And then thirdly, there was a rumor that the owner of the building was overheard saying something about to someone else, like pull it on the phone. In other words, like demolish it.
Right.
But I don't think that's what happened. I mean, I think what really happened was that the stress created by the collapses of 1 and 2 World Trade Center was massive. I mean, it created a seismic event, right? So basically, these two 110-story buildings. I mean, for people who never went inside, you have to understand how big they were. When you got off the elevator, if you had to go to an office that was on the opposite side of the building, you walked and walked and walked and walked and walked. And it might not be 5 or 10 minutes till you got to the other side. I mean, it was not, these were big ass buildings full, of course, of people and furniture and all sorts of other crap. When those things came down, it literally created a seismic event, right? It literally created an earthquake in Lower Manhattan. The 7 World Trade was a much smaller building right across the street. So it was structurally weakened by the collapse of 1 and 2. Not to mention the heat, the fire, the flames, which I saw on from New Jersey when coming on a train that afternoon around the time that 7 collapsed. They were 40 to 50 to 60 stories high. So the heat was intense and massive. And there was a fuel tank located near the 1st or 2nd floor in 7 World Trade Center. So the heat probably detonated it and caused the building, basically a fire started in there and the whole thing came down. So I don't know. I mean, obviously I don't know. And I have questions about 9/11, but my main questions have to do with the Shanksville flight. I think United 93, I want to know, if you read the 9/11 Commission report, it says that basically Dick Cheney gave the shoot down order. And then there's a timeline and it sort of says there's enough time for the Air National Guardsmen to intercept that plane and shoot it down. So did they? Or do you believe the drink cart of death detail? The other thing is they found debris, including one of the engines, 12 miles away from the crash site. The plane came down, basically vertically. So how is that possible? I mean, planes don't just shed engines. So it's like, not to mention papers and all sorts of crap were found like miles away from the crash site.
Hold on. I do want to point out that if it was a Boeing plane, it is a distinct possibility that parts would be shed in mid-flight.
Good point.
Doors, engines. So this is not outside of the realm of possibility.
That's true. No, thank you for that.
Boeing does kind of just keep flying, interesting and exciting. So
that's true. Keeps it spicy.
No, we need to have ourselves a Rumble Premium episode on 9/11 because I have so many questions. And
oh yeah, that's a good idea.
And I'm going to be the first one to tell you, get down, Cat. I do not believe in one way, shape, or form iota the official story of 9/11. One, why is everything still classified? I mean, if the case is closed, if the story is told the way that it is, why keep everything all classified? It's because they're lying dogs. That's why.
Well, I mean, look, the idea that the U.S. government would lie to the American people about a significant political event, shocking. I mean, look, I think the fact is that the American people have questions, and those questions should be answered. And I think, we all have maybe different questions. Some people are like, I think I'm like the only person who spends any time thinking that I don't, all respect to Todd Beamer, but I don't really believe the drink cart of death theory, And so I would like, and the problem is the 9/11 Commission was highly politicized. The report is very highly politicized. Adrian brings up the question, how come there's no CCTV of the plane going into the Pentagon? Well, I mean, apparently such CCTV footage did exist, like from at the Pentagon and also buildings nearby. And there's, it's never been released. So I think it exists, or at least it existed, but we have never gotten to see it. And so that's a great example of a question that we should have answered, right?
Yeah. And the best part is because we can have these kind of conversations on Rumble. So if you're on YouTube, if you're not following us on Rumble, come on over, join us. The weather's fine. And the best part is there's no censorship, because YouTube would 100% shut us down if we start talking about 9/11 or vaccines or anything else in any kind of a derogatory way.
The vaccines that are safe and effective in all forms.
Yeah, they work. Everyone should get like 7 or 8 vaccines every week. Honestly,
collect them all.
Yes, it's like Pokemon or illegal migrants.
So, by the way, one of the recurring things here, a lot of these news stories that we're talking about, these disasters, they got overshadowed by, the victory in World War I, the victory in World War II. So here's one, overshadowed by armistice news of World War I. We forgot about the Hammond Circus train wreck of 1918. A freight train rear-ended a circus train, as can happen, killing 86 people. As fires trapped the performers. I assume some animals got killed too. The USS Akron airship crash. Yep. I never heard of this. Off the coast of New Jersey, an airship broke apart in a storm, killing 73 people. There were no lifeboats or life jackets. Eclipsed by World War II airship losses. Oh well, but it improved naval weather forecasting.
I'm gonna take us on to another rabbit trail. We got to talk about the TWA 800 too. I mean, if we're gonna be going down this rabbit hole, hey, y'all in the chat, let us know what y'all want us to talk about, because 100%. Oh yeah.
Yeah, TWA 800 is fascinating, right? So TWA 800 left JFK bound for Paris, and the plane crashed just south of eastern Long Island, just shy of the Hamptons. It happened during the day. The authorities concluded that a fuel line had caught fire in the wing, bringing a fuel line connecting the engine through the wing to the main body of the jet had caught fire, and that's what brought it down. Pierre Salinger, JFK's former press secretary, and a really important journalist, he concluded, based on his investigation, that it was an accidental missile firing by U.S. Navy ships conducting maneuvers and drills underneath. A witness who was flying in a small plane nearby, who seemed to be a serious person, claimed that he saw a vapor contrail come up from a missile. So, and very strangely, if you remember, that was right after TWA 800 went down. That's because of TWA 800. I don't know what the connection is supposed to be here. They made it so that you could no longer drop packages in a mailbox. You had to go to the post office and sit and deliver it directly to a window. There was never any assertion that it was like mail related or cargo related. No one ever said that, but it was just like, oh yeah, we're just going to start doing that, out of an abundance of caution. But TWA 800 that's an interesting question.
I mean, that's even before the day really of ion lithium batteries being a thing. A few years ago, you probably remember there was a problem with Samsung. Their Galaxy phones, they kept catching on fire and exploding on planes.
Yeah, that's right. Remember, and there's also, and I think some airlines still prohibit, or maybe all of them prohibit those. Those people have the luggage that has like the recharger automatically embedded in it, so you can, and they don't let those on planes either. So, I mean, flammable things on planes are generally, but you can bring matches and a lighter on. Go figure.
Yeah. Now, Adrian wants to know if we can do a premium show on DB Cooper.
Ooh. Yeah, DB Cooper is, of course, the hijacker from the 1970s who jumped out of the back of the plane, and some of his money was recovered, right? So, we could do a whole like conspiracies and God, the 1970s, such a rich period for that kind of stuff, for sure. All right, let's keep going here. I'm curious what you have to say about this, Robby. The U.S. could see its population shrink for the first time in history this year because immigration numbers and birth rates have gone down. Net international immigration to the U.S. this year could drop to as low as negative 525,000 this year. In other words, I think that's self-explanatory. According to an analysis by the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank, with a net of 519,000 births reported by the census last year, the U.S. could lose about 6,000 people. Not a lot, but the first population decline in nearly 250 years of U.S. history. AEI thinks that net immigration into the U.S. will fall off between 2.8 million to about 115,000 positive, or minus 525,000, which even at the lower end is still a 96% fall in international immigration. According to the American even during the Civil War, when 700,000 Americans were killed, and during the COVID pandemic, the US population always increased every year, even if not by a lot. The decrease has been compounded by an apparent national sex recession. America's fertility rate is projected to drop to just 1.6 births per woman over the next 30 years. And that is below the replacement rate. Just to stay even, which you need is 2.1. Why 0.1? Because people die. That, according to the Institute for Family Studies, the survey found that just 37% of dudes and women were having sex once a week even. Back in 1990, that was 55%. So 37 as opposed to 55, 35 years ago. So that's a big deal. The number of immigrants in the U.S. already plunged for the first time in 50 years, down by 1.4 million people in the first 6 months of this year, after Trump cracked down on illegal border crossings and mass deportations. The Homeland Security says at least 1.6 million illegals have voluntarily left the U.S. since Trump came back, contributing to this massive decline in the immigrant population. Net international migration could drop to as low as, we already got into that. Federal immigration authorities have additionally arrested more than 359,000 allegedly illegal migrants and deported 332,000 during the first 200 days of the second Trump administration. Despite the drop, the proportion of immigrants in the U.S. is still high. 15.4% of people here were born somewhere else. The demographic change could have an impact on the workforce, 19% of whom are immigrants, according to Pew, down from 20% at the start of the year, with a significant reduction. 750,000 immigrant workers who were here last year are not here this year.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, about the sex drought. If you're working 3 jobs just to pay the bills, when are you going to have time to have sex? So, I mean, that's a big part of it. And second, when we had Achilles on the program podcast yesterday, and the question I asked him was, why is it bad that Trump is at least trying to do something to try and revitalize the working class here in the United States? So he's doing it the wrong way. He should be going through Congress, actually forcing them to pass laws to actually codify what he's doing, so that way CEOs can't just wait out the clock. And the answer he gave, frankly, pissed me off, because the answer, it just reflects the indifference of the upper class of this country. Whether it's politicians, whether it's businessmen, money men, whatever. It was sit down, shut up, enjoy your fentanyl overdose, and die, because we don't need you anymore, because we're outsourced all these jobs in the name of capitalism and profits. If that's the answer that the ruling class is going to give us, sit down, shut up, and die, enjoy your fentanyl zombie walk, then I have zero problem whatsoever with the population going down, especially in terms of immigration, because the fewer people that are here, that's going to force wages to go up. Second, when the working class people figure out that the people that are supposed to be leading our country actually hates us, when people figure that out, when this thing explodes, and it's going to, I don't want this to degenerate into an all-out race war in addition to a class war. That's my take on it. Is it controversial? Yeah. But tell me where I'm wrong, because that's the answer that I heard. Sit down, shut up, and enjoy your rations while we outsource what's left of your jobs and continue hollowing out the middle class of the country. So that being the reality, fuck immigration.
Well, so here's the thing, Robby. I mean, look, under normal laws of supply and demand, right? Reducing the number of workers, should cause wages to go up, right? Overall. So that no matter how you do that, whether you kill off 10% or you deport 5% or whatever you do. But the thing is that if the population declines, the number of consumers drops too. And this system is set up to expect constant expansion. Like the cliche that like a shark has to keep swimming or it'll die. It's not actually true. They actually sleep. But, let's just assume that were true. People just thought they didn't sleep because they never saw them, because the sharks go down to the bottom of the sea to be left alone, and they don't want to be seen sleeping. So, but anyway, the thing is that the U.S. economy has to expand 2 to 3% by GDP every year just to be considered moderately healthy, right? And if it expands at 1% or 0.5%, or God forbid it goes down, then you're in a recession, as we talked to Achilles on Deprogram yesterday. And we've talked to him about that here too. It's like, that you might even plunge into a depression. They've set up a system that requires constantly expanding, particularly the consumer base, but also the workforce. And it's just unsustainable. It kind of doesn't make sense, because nothing can grow forever. It's fine as long as it works, but then at some point it won't.
But the point is, though, and this is the question that I have that no one's able to answer. With automation and AI, you simply do not need as many workers. In my opinion, the entire concept of GDP is outdated, needs to be replaced. It doesn't work in the modern world. It simply does not work. You don't need as many people.
Agreed.
Yesterday when we had the interview, when you interviewed me about my life story, you still need people to go pick cotton, but you don't need people to pull out the seeds because you got the cotton gin. You can automate that part of the process out. We have the Chinese have robots that build their cars from one of the assembly line to the other, and then they have other robots actually repair the robots on the maintenance line that need to be repaired. They don't need the people. I mean, that's the point. That's the issue. So my question is, what are you going to do when the economy implodes, while at the same time you're importing every swinging deck from the third world here because all of a sudden you need them for some reason?
We're not doing that. That's the story we just told. It used to be, but we're not.
I completely agree. And so now that's being kind of clamped down. If population goes down, who cares? Because those jobs aren't going to be here anymore anyway.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the idea that you don't have a right to exist, that you shouldn't be able to pay your rent or see a doctor unless you hold a job, doesn't make sense unless everyone can have a job. And so, like you said, they don't need as many of us as they used to. Look, this is like, I don't know if you were a fan of of Star Trek, but like every now and then on Star Trek, the team would land on a planet where they would be like, many years ago, our technology advanced to the point where we were no longer obligated to work. The computers do everything for us now. We have time for leisure and pleasure, and we're bettering ourselves psychologically and reading and becoming educated and enlightened. And that's paradise, right? I mean, that's the ideal. That's what we would like. And we are actually kind of getting closer to that. We could be getting closer to that, but we're not setting up a system to say that. We're not saying like, hey guys, we won. We created machines that can do a lot for us. We don't all have to work, or maybe we all have to work, but maybe we only have to work a third as much. But we haven't acknowledged that. We basically are still expecting people to do something that is pertinent to to an economy that's 100 years old. Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't, Robby, I mean, I agree with you. It's a problem. And I think, unfortunately, this is a system that is not going to change of its own accord. It's not capable to, it's not nimble enough to reform itself. And you can certainly see it. Look, in Washington, it's not like Congress sits around thinking about these giant problems and how to solve them. Okay. I mean, they don't. And
Congress should do its job.
They're squabbling.
I mean, serious question. What does Congress do? The only person in Congress right now doing anything that in any way, shape, or form resembles what his job is Thomas Massie. He's the only one. And the dude has set Washington, D.C. on fire because Trump is more interested in protecting the pedophiles in the upper echelons of American leadership than he is in actually addressing the core issue, which is what's going to happen when the working class people of this country figure out that we're fucked. And when they figure that out, then we're going to have something that's make the French Revolution look like a walk in the park. We have
I agree with you. I mean, look,
it's going to
Thomas
explode.
Massie aside, there are a few people who say the right things sometimes, right? Every now and then, MTG says something smart. Every now and then, Bernie Sanders says something smart. But the problem is, what you would want. I mean, what's Congress really for, right? Congress should be, our elected representatives who sit around and think, like, what are our problems that we need to fix, and then come up with a dozen possible solutions and come up with and vote on which one's the best one and then enact it. But that's not what they do. No. They're not spending any time doing that shit. I mean, there's no way for it to work. And think about all the people who go to Congress and then resign like 10 years later. They're like, I'm tired of sitting in meetings and not doing anything. I'm wasting my life. Nothing. Congress is like basically where, action goes to die. Fuck this. I'm out.
Yeah. And you know what's going to happen eventually? Once you get to this kind of just late stage oligarchy, is that the people are going to clamor for results, and the person who's going to bring those results is going to be a strong man. That's what's going to happen. And so then what the question is going to be is that going to happen before or after the population explodes? Because it's going to happen. And I don't want that to happen. I would rather actually have some kind of orderly transition to a government that actually will address these issues. But no one's interested in doing that. It's
not going to happen. All right. Last but not least, let's see here. So the turmoil at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and states beginning to take more control of their own vaccine decisions are fracturing the once national consensus around immunization, setting the stage for reorganization of the way vax recommendations work in the U.S. The moves together point toward an increasingly stark divide emerging around vaccinations, with some GOP states rolling back or eliminating mandates, while Democratic states split off from the CDC to come up with their own vax guidance. On Wednesday, California, Oregon, and Washington formed a public health alliance that they said would provide credible information about vaccine safety in response to the recent firing of CDC Director Susan Monares, the resignations of top scientists afterwards, and the FDA's controversial new guidelines about who should get COVID shots. Last week, New Mexico announced that it's ordering pharmacies to get rid of potential barriers and ensure access to COVID vaccines. Colorado followed suit. Also yesterday, Florida decided to eliminate vax mandates across the state, including those for kids in public schools. Other states have also weighed in, rolling back vaccination mandates, most notably in Texas. This split between red and blue America comes as formerly fringe and debunked claims about the health risks of vaccinations have found mainstream appeal and been embraced by the Trump administration. Repeatedly hearing that vaccines cause autism or that an mRNA vaccine will alter your DNA can erode public trust, says Dr. Peter Chin Hong, infectious disease expert at UC San Francisco, referring to two of the most common pieces of vaccine misinformation. Obviously, we have to tread carefully on this discussion due to YouTube. But I thought, aside from, obviously, I do think that in terms of the vaccine skeptics who are parents who are concerned about the what they think is a link between autism and vaccines, they deserve a study. You know what I mean? Like, they deserve the government to look into this and treat it seriously and see what's really going on. And they haven't gotten that. that's one thing. And if you just brush people off and just say shut up, that's going to sow mistrust. And then
it's worse. I mean, it's worse than that. So I'm going to unpack something for you here because I've been thinking about this. The same government that told us Joe Biden is perfectly fine and in complete control of his faculties is the same government that's saying you should inject all of these foreign bodies into your kids in the first year of life. And if they're blatantly lying to you about one thing, and then they lie to you about going to war in Iraq, in which you kill over 1 million people, and then they lie to you, say, "Oh, the economy is fine. Sit down, shut up, racist. You're just complaining." People eventually just start to not believe what the government's saying anymore. I think that's what this is more than anything else. I think more than vaccines, this is the population giving the middle finger to the government, saying we don't like you, we don't believe you.
There's hearings right now about this on Capitol Hill. As a Senate hearing, RFK Jr. Attacked the former CDC chief. Senate Democrats are calling for Kennedy to resign. So, pretty crazy.
And there's a couple of Republicans calling for him to resign too.
There's a lot of I mentioned Octavia Butler, great novelist, Parable of the Sower. Basically, it's a dystopian trilogy about what happens when the U.S. falls apart. And basically, the Pacific Northwest and California break off first and start doing their own thing. I mean, whatever one thinks about vaccines, I mean, obviously, the whole idea of public health requires a unified front, right? Like, I mean, basically, we all need to be on the same page. Otherwise, it doesn't work. I mean, it's sort of like gun policy, right? If you have like New York City for a long time, or the city of Chicago, well, you can't buy guns. There's no gun stores here, and we're trying to eliminate gun violence. So no, but it doesn't work if there's gun stores on the other side of the city line. In Indiana, you can just drive to Gary and buy a gun. It doesn't work if you can go to Connecticut and buy a gun. In the same way, in terms of vaccine policy, it doesn't work if, hey, California, the West Coast states are all on the same page and everyone has to get vaccinated. But like in Nevada, you don't have to. So there's no wall there. It's not like the Gaza security wall. You can't keep those. I mean, the diseases travel freely along with the people. So it's just the whole thing is, I mean, this is about a big issue. This is about just a country that can't get its story straight.
Well, it just goes to show just how much disgust and that's what I mean, just out and out, just disgust and hostility that people have towards the government. It's just, the institutions are breaking down. The trust in the institutions are breaking down. Like, when Trump first got elected in 2016, the leadership of the Democratic Party went out and said that Russia stole the election. And they kept banging that drum for 4 years, including getting the man impeached 2 different times. Now, I'm no Trump supporter. I don't like that guy. I think he's a complete sellout and a con man at best, and just a moron and just genocidal fucknut at the worst. But I mean, you can't, on one hand, just keep getting caught lie after lie after lie after lie after lie, and then just get surprised when the people that you're lying to don't believe you on anything. I'm just like, if I came on here, Ted, and I just started just spinning you yarn every single day that I come onto the show, and should I in any way, shape, or form be surprised when you don't believe a thing that I tell you?
Probably not. No.
Well, there you go. I mean, our ruling class looks at the American people with the utmost contempt. And I think it's probably worse than contempt. A lot of times I think it's hatred. I mean, how yesterday, how you and John Kiriakou were talking about Trump blowing up that boat in the Caribbean. He said it was a drug runner. Well, people are just talking about, oh, well, was it? Was it not? What we should do about the border? Meanwhile, there's 100,000 Americans dying every year from drugs. at least he's doing something.
True.
Now, is it the right something? I don't know. But he was elected because he's the only one saying, I will do something besides tell you to sit down, shut up, and fuck off. I mean, eventually that doesn't work anymore.
True. No,
And
I
so
mean, that is true. Although I still have to say I have major problems with extrajudicial killings, and
I do too.
especially when there's just no evidence whatsoever. I mean, even if there were evidence isn't good enough. You can't just kill people. I mean, like, you know, I mean, you
We're
have
talking about countries kill people all the time.
I know, but they shouldn't be able to.
But they do. I mean that. I mean.
I know, but I'm going to have problems with it every time.
You know, communist nations are really good at killing people. In all fairness,
Yeah, and I have problems with that too.
I mean, you know, but I think that's just kind of just bring this back in. You know, Florida versus the lockdown states. You know, California and Michigan, Oregon, like, they were putting people in jail for trying to go to church during COVID. Florida stayed open. So of the two, which one's freer? Florida's giving you the choice. The left is really big about saying my body, my choice. Until it's something that they think is orthodoxy, and if you don't do it, then it's my body and it's my choice. You don't actually own yourself. And I think that's a big part of the split too.
Well, that is part of the split. I mean, what part of bodily autonomy matters more? The CD and inconsistency, and the CDC lost a lot of its credibility with the whole mask fiasco, right? Like, oh, you don't need masks at all. And it's like, oh, you have to wear masks. Oh, no, you should stop wearing masks. It's kind of, you get whiplash. Robby, we should leave it there. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Thanks for joining the TMI Show. Manila will be back tomorrow. Please like, follow, and share the show. We're here Monday through Friday, 10 o'clock a.m. on the East Coast. That's 7 on the West Coast. You guys can do the math for the rest. And we will see y'all later. Let me see if I can figure out how to do the outro here. Here we go. Okay, bye.
Click that